So what an import statement does is it allows you to have small programs that do an awful lot. You develop them, you stick them in a file somewhere, or a Python file somewhere, and you just stick them out in the pucker brush. What's the pucker brush? Go. It's just anywhere. Anywhere but where you're working now. That way, when you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you make changes to your program. Because I know everything else is put out in the pucker brush, when I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I have 7 lines that I could possibly erase. That's all. 7 lines. That's all I'm going to erase by mistake. That's a whole lot better than 107. A whole lot better than 107. And it makes it so that I can reassemble my program a little bit easier. I will say this, and I trust everybody puts it with a realistic grain of salt. You should always make a backup of all your programs. And stick them someplace else where you're not working. Because it's not when your programs crash or when you screw up and ruin your program and forget what you're doing. It's what day you do it. And then you need to reinvigorate your mindset and bring everything back in. I cannot tell you the number of times I've done that. So this is what it really looks like, an import, and this is what an import does. An import goes out to the library. Let's say we've got an imported pen. This imported pen immediately starts to run. So since it's running right from the get-go, when you have that imported pen, because it's actually a program, is going to go out and it's going to start to run. And it's going to import sys and it's going to import your OS. Both items you need in order to get this project up and running. Okay? Now in this particular case, it's only going to use the OS. At least I think so. Yes, it's only going to use the OS. So I could actually pull the sys out. But I want to keep the sys in there for what?
Just in case you want to change it.
No. Inheritance.
Right.
Inheritance. I want to be able to inherit it into the next process. Just in case. And if I don't need it, what am I going to do?
Get rid of it.
Get rid of it.
Garbage
Take
collection.
it out in the woods and shoot it. Garbage collection. That's correct. And this process does command 1. It deletes some test files that I've got out there, and then it opens some test files, some files I've got for reading. It creates a list. We'll talk about that later. It creates my working directory. Let's see. Then it sits down in it. It basically sets up a working directory, sets up my OS, does a working directory, pulls off my carriage return line feeds, utilities in, system path, prints. Path is set, and it's included in the utilities. That means that it has run. It has run. It has run because it's not a dev. It's actually a small program that I have written. I carry it around in my pocket. I can run it on this machine. I can run it on that machine. I can run it on this machine, and it will get all the same quality material. And if I download the file that I'm using for this in development, it will run on any machine because it will go out and find it. It will find where it is because it sets the path automatically on the individual machine that it's running. So I can plug it into any machine and it's going to set the path and run. That's important. This is an actual process that runs because it's important. The minute it's important, it runs. It just runs the process. it doesn't care that there are no deaths, or maybe there are deaths. It doesn't care. It just runs the process because that's what it's being told to do. It's basically said, run these steps. Find my path. And I carry that around, as I say, with all my programs. So guess what I never run into with my programs? Anybody? I never run into a path problem. Never have to reset my path. I forgot what that program looked like till I looked at it this morning. That's how old that program is. That program was originally developed 10 years ago in another language. And I just carry it around. And if I'm using Python today, I get it from the other language, and I copy the code, and then I modify it to guess what? It's in Python. I'm doing it in C, the same thing. C+, the same thing. I never had a path problem. Why? Why would I go to that problem? Go to that issue? Why? No. Because it drives me nuts when I get a path. I go bananas. So I fix the problem. I don't just let it constantly be there. Then let's go look at your reformatter. Now your reformatter has a whole bunch of defs in it. All this reformatter does is it just basically takes in the CSV file and it reformats them. Now, when I wrote this reformatter, I've rewritten it a couple of different times. Why do I rewrite something a couple of different times? Well, because as I'm going through things, this I use to basically test my CSV file. Basically, what that does is just runs things through to make sure my vision of what's going is right. Okay? I have no guarantee that what I'm grabbing is necessarily there. What this does is it creates a separate file and dumps all the headings out of the CSV file in a nice, neat line. And it attaches a number with them, a cardinal value of where they fall in the line. So I know what field it is. Because in Python, when you're doing CSV files, you need to know stupid stuff when you're pulling data from a CSV file, like the relative position of the data you're pulling. If you don't know that, you're going to pull the wrong data. So I've got a way of printing out the first line and giving me the relative position. I'm happy with that. Once I'm done with that, I give it triple quotes at the bottom, and what does that do? Comments it out, basically. Comments it out. It's no longer a value. I'm never going to use this again, and, well, let's say I hope I'm never going to use it again. If they ever change the Python file, or the file that's coming to me, I'm going to use it. And this I'm importing into my program with a AKA of AL. Now, when you import something into a program, let's get a couple of things here, just so that maybe everybody understands what's going on. When you import something into a program, if this is your program, and we'll call this advisors, and you import your menus, what it really does, it takes it and it attaches your menus to your program. It concatenates them. So your menus actually become part of your program. And in this case, your reformatter. becomes part of your program. And your pen path. Becomes part of your program. So it's a method in which you can sit. It's a practical approach to sitting there and splitting your program up so that you can have 10 different methods or 10 different imports that you've already tested the methods in, the processes in, the imports, and they all work. Have I got anybody confused yet? Nobody? No questions? Okay. I'll take that for right now. And it basically runs. Now, I can have imports to this process right here. This is a class that I built a long time ago. It's called calls to DOS. And I import calls to DOS here so that I can use it. I also import utilities here. But I use a small U. I use a small U in all my subroutines, which are imported into my drivers, and I use a large U in my drivers. Why?
So you know the difference between the two.
When I get an error message, I'm going to know where it's coming from, or have a feel of where it's coming from. I hope. And then I import my menus here. Now, it's not so hard to see how these imports work. Let's go look at the menu. These imports are all coming from a different directory than the program itself. We're not going to do that tonight. I hope to do that later. But tonight what we're going to do is build a menu. And if we look at our menu, that's all my menu is. It's a clear screen routine that imports my OS, clears it. Once that's done, it throws it out with the garbage. That import is gone because that import is embedded in the process. So when that process is done, it just throws out the menu, or throws out that process. And this is the menu I set up. That's all it is. It's just a simple little menu. It has nothing fancy about it at all. It's not beautiful. It ain't what I'd like to see in the end of the world, but it's very, very simple. And underneath it, at some point, I will build other menus for this particular project, because before I'm done with this project, I know somebody is going to say to me the ubiquitous word, collection orders. Can you? Can you? And then I have to go back to my file and start figuring out whether I can. And 9 times out of 10, somebody sees something they want. It's a little bit different. Now, this particular set of programs produces this particular project. Produces this particular project. This is a list of classes that are being offered at Manchester Community College for accounting, and it takes them out of a CSV file and makes them into a HTML file so that somebody can sit there and theoretically advise you a little bit quicker and a little bit easier than advising you the way they have. I'm in the process of making it into a punch table like what we use in our class, where a student will just punch in ACCT, bingo, there are the ACCT classes. I think it's going to make picking classes a little bit